Hello, welcome to the channel. I'm Chris Lehto, retired F-16 pilot, now investigating UAPs. Unidentified anomalous phenomena were the topic of a recent conference in the European Union Parliament. 20 March 2024 in the European Parliament was the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena EU Airspace Reporting and Scientific Assessment. Links to the 2-hour conference are in the description, but I go through and give a short summary here. Let's check it out. We had introductory remarks by Francisco Guerrero. He's a member of the European Parliament. Historical EU context by Eduardo Russo. He's from UAP Czech. They actually had Ryan Graves give his statement from online from the US. Joachim Dekkers, UAP Coalition Netherlands, gives some interesting points. Dr. Beatrice Villarroel, she's from the Soul Foundation, and she has a very interesting point about seeing things in space before Sputnik. And then finally, Christian van Heijst. He's a civil aviation pilot. I will hopefully get him on the show in the next few weeks, but he's a commercial pilot who talks about his own UAP experiences. So thank you for being here. Let's get to the show. Chris Lehto, welcome to LehtoFiles.
Politically, this event has four main objectives. First, start the debate inside the European Parliament on unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is a topic that is dear to thousands of Europeans. The feedback that I've been having from several EU citizens and outside the EU borders has been overwhelming. Secondly, to decrease the stigma associated with the topic inside important sectors of our society, such as civil aviation, the military, journalism, but also politics. Third, and probably the most important, it's essential that all the debates surrounding UAPs is based in the scientific method and held in close cooperation with public institutions, the academia, civil society, and all the professionals that are willing to open and voluntarily share their experiences. Fourth, and lastly, the path of the European Union in regards of UAPs must be made with transparency, data sharing, and accountability, so we don't lose our credibility in a topic that is dear to many of our constituencies and citizens.
Okay, Francisco Guerrero is a Portuguese politician currently serving as an independent member of the European Parliament for Portugal, having been elected while standing as a candidate for People's Animals Nature. He led the conference, his introductory remarks, explaining about UAPs needing to actually have some sort of safety and at least be talked about in the European Union. Basically, removing the stigma. Stigma is still a huge issue. Joachim Dekkers from UAP Coalition Netherlands, he talks about Gaipan cases of 3,037 cases, unidentified phenomenon after investigation. So basically about 3% are going to be UAP, meaning after investigating, they determine that it doesn't fall into lack of data, it's not perfectly identified, and it's not probably identified. So 3% is a UAP case. They mentioned the 5 observables, and he gives an interesting case here.
First of all, I'd like to say I'm very honored and privileged to be here, and I'd like to thank very much Francisco Guerrero for organizing this historic event. We, from the UAP Coalition Netherlands, are an independent NGO, and we represent the interested professionals within aviation, armed forces, and police who did have an encounter with UAP anomalous, unidentified anomalous phenomena. We also promote research, awareness raising, cooperation, and regulations regarding UAP together with a dedicated team of volunteers. So it's essential to understand the significance of UAP, how they intersect with safety of our airspace, with our security, and our collective consciousness. The next question is, what are the specific characteristics of this 3% of UAP which is not explainable? What makes it unique? Experts use the term the 5 observables. Positive lift. That means they have the ability to fly without apparent means of propulsion or lift. Instantaneous acceleration. They can reach very high rates of speed in a very short amount of time. Hypersonic velocity. They're able to travel faster, very much faster than the speed of sound, with no sonic boom or other physical effects. Transmedium travel. They seem to be able to seamlessly move through space, air, and water. And low observability, they're able to conceal themselves from visual and sensor observation. So this means that they represent a significant challenge to our current scientific knowledge and understanding. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the importance of taking the UAP witnesses seriously. For more than 80 years, professionals from aviation, armed forces, law enforcement, but also citizens who reported UAPs sightings have faced skepticism, ridicule, or even professional repercussions. In this respect, I'd like to mention an example, which is quite famous in the Netherlands. It's the Soesterberg case, which happened in 1979. 12 Dutch military personnel saw, and actually independently partly, a triangular-shaped object around 45 meters in diameter slowly fly over their airbase, which, by the way, was a joint airbase with the US. And to this day, the witnesses feel that they were not taken seriously. This is from a documentary recently released by Bram Rosa and showing in many cinemas in the Netherlands.
Die weerspiegelde in de lucht door inversie.
Dus ze hebben het eigenlijk weggewoven. Ze hebben weggewoven van ja, het zijn luchtspiegelingen, het waren dit en er was dat. Ja, en daar, kijk, dat kan niet. Als er zoveel mensen hier om je heen staan, hadden ze dat 100% serieus moeten nemen.
So stigma and not being able to talk about encounters or even being ridiculed can certainly have a negative effect on health of professionals.
So what's next? They said awareness and education is priority one, really. As you saw there, no one's taking these seriously. And they talk about legislation. Can they actually introduce some sort of legislation that allows reporting at least? Okay, next one to Eduardo Russo from UAP Check. And this is the historical EU context.
The historical European context. UAPs are not just an American phenomenon, as some may think or believe. It's always been a global phenomenon, with sightings and testimonies from all over the world. Europe has always been in a central position as of sighting reports, even before the American public discovered the flying saucers in the summer of 1947. The first post-war wave of unidentified aerial sightings were the ghost rockets over Scandinavia, but also Italy, Greece, and the Mediterranean countries in 1946. And there are a lot of European witnesses. You may ask, how many? We are talking of opinion polls that asked the question, not so many asking the question, did you see a UFO? And we have some seemingly different percentages that amount to an average, a weighted average of 6.5% people having seen UFOs. If we remain to the European Union countries, that means as much as 29 million people having seen, thinking they have seen a UAP, a UFO, call it as you like. Not all witnesses are reporting their own sightings. Our estimates are that less than 1% of the witnesses are stepping forth and are reporting their sightings.
So that is 6.5% based on polls going back many years. So that would be 29 million people, they argue, have witnessed some sort of UAP event or think they have.
Since the databases of case histories collected by the civilian UAP organizations are presently comprising about 170,000 reports. Is it much? Is it few? It's higher than the total number of USA reports as collected by our sister organizations in the United States of America. We are talking of Europe in a geographical sense, from Portugal to Ukraine, from Norway to Malta. Unidentified aerial phenomena are not regular in their apparitions. Sighting reports are coming in waves with rich or poor years. The first large wave of sightings was in the spring of 1950, and it was a really European one, hitting several countries. What are people seeing? The largest part of sightings are either distant lights in the sky, you see more than 75% of reports, or of distant daylight flying objects. But we also have got higher strangeness and higher credibility reports as close encounters when the phenomenon is not more far than 150 meters from the observer. And it is about 10% of, this is just a national sample, my national sample from Italy. It's about 28,000 reports.
Okay, so that's out of 28,000 records, 10% of them, so 2,758 cases, they were close encounters. I thought that number was just amazing.
The special cases I'm referring to may be sightings from the military, maybe physical effects, temporary physical effects on the surrounding environment, pilot reports that we've been talking about, that Andre mentioned before, ground traces, radar detection cases. And just think that we cannot get all radar detection cases, since a large part of them are military case histories, and we are not given unless there is some declassification of data. And more recently, the attention moved to the sea, to the water, and you see we have about 1%, less more than 1% of USOs, underwater objects. You can choose a name for them. And there are social side effects, which have been the object of academic studies by psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists. Even if I can't talk here and now some real panic situations, we are left with a great number of people wondering what they saw, millions of people.
Yes, 29 people, as you mentioned. It was from Eduardo Russo. Thought that was very interesting. They have tons of data, and they're presenting it here in the European Union Parliament. Okay, next came Beatrice Villarroel. She's from the Nordic Institute of Theoretical Physics and Stockholm University up in Sweden. She mentions the UFO swarms over DC. Where does science stand on UAPs? Basically, scientific evidence for UAP as a phenomenon is missing. The data is often classified, and civilian scientists are only recently engaged in the question. So there's little funding and huge stigma. Academic researchers risk their careers. She mentions there is a lot of data. This coming from 3AF Sigma 2. That's a famous organization in Europe.
The first thing, of course, is that one effort I really admire is by the Sigma 2, led by Luc Denis, where they are looking at cases where they have multiple measurements and have witnesses, and then they go actually do very beautiful modelings and simulations, trying to test different hypotheses, because hypothesis-driven science is very important, not only looking for the thing that remains, but testing different hypotheses. And they do really excellent work and with testing famous cases or well-documented cases. Another very, very famous effort now is the one of the Galileo project, where they are building a system to detect everything that moves on the sky with, let's say, with radars, observations, with optical telescopes, with infrared cameras. And here you see a picture of an infrared camera array. And then they will use machine learning to say what the different object is, so that you can separate a fighter jet from a three-winged duck or anything else that moves through the sky, or an UAP. So this is a really beautiful effort led by Avi Loeb and Harvard. So a third way, which I'm more inclined into, is actually testing the actual hypothesis of that we are dealing with non-human objects from an advanced civilization far away. Let's say they send a probe to our solar system. And probes, anything artificial is going to reflect sunlight as if it's very flat. I mean, it's always reflects sunlight, but if it's very flat, you can get short flashes. And these short flashes, you can actually see from the Earth, even if the object is small. And we see them like, we can see satellites every day, and in the same way, we can see these alien objects. And the way to do that, to actually separate human objects from alien or ET objects, is by, for example, using images from before Sputnik 1, the first human satellites. So what could you expect to see? Well, you could expect to see multiple such flashes. You could see either a single, or you can see several along a line, or you can just see multiple. And has anyone ever seen something? Well, in 2021, we found a very weird example where you could see 9 stars or flashes appearing and vanishing within a short time period. And here we didn't know if it was real or not. We could exclude every conventional astronomical explanation. We tried a lot of instrumental explanations. We were wondering, could this be some kind of plate defect, some kind of nuclear fallout that got stuck on it? And this became a mystery for us, because if a real observation, then it was best fit by, what we discussed before, maybe UAPs or maybe some new physics, we don't know. Here's another example where you see much clearer such flashes. There are 3 bright stars that appear and vanish within 50 minutes in an image from the 19th of July, 1952. And this was published in the monthly notices of Royal Astronomical Society, which is one of the most respected astronomical journals. And it was posed as a mystery. When it comes to things that are aligned, here you see another example of several along a line from the 27th of July, 1952. And the probability to get such kind of flashes or just any objects in a line is 1 in 10,000. You can estimate it. This has not been published because it's faced huge stigma during the review process. However, those who took note of my introduction might also recognize that there's something funny about the dates I presented, and that's that they happened right during the Washington flap, which we don't know if this is a coincidence or not.
So those are great examples of pre-Sputnik. This is before Sputnik. And they, like she mentioned there, she ruled out all known astronomical observations. So they don't know what it could be. It is a UAP, and that's pre-Sputnik. So artificial satellites. Interesting. I thought this was interesting as well. The European Crash Retrieval Initiative is an effort led by UAP Sweden and Ocean X team with the support of the Vasco Project, interdisciplinary group of civilian scientists and experts. The project has the ambition of mapping and analyzing alleged UAP crash sites on European soil, both contemporary and historical. This is a shot of the conference room in the EU Parliament. There's Christian van Heijst there. They'll be speaking, and this is while they're having issues with contacting Ryan Graves.
My name is Christian van Heijst. I'm a Dutch airline pilot with over 20 years of professional flying experience, close to 10,000 flying hours, and besides that, I'm a professional photographer as well. Seen some things in the beginning part of my career that I found peculiar, but I always thought, together with my colleagues, that it must have been something military. It was only after I saw the testimony from Mr. Ryan Graves and also Commander David Fravor that I started to realize that the things that I've been seeing in the first couple of years of my flying career were actually maybe more special than I initially thought. I must say, also in the last 20 years of flying, I've seen a lot of things from the cockpit. I've seen military operations, meaning I've seen a lot of rockets, missiles. I've seen a lot of explosions. I've seen satellites. I've seen rockets being blown up in the sky, all sorts of celestial fireworks, let's say. But some of the things still defy an explanation. And it's only, as I said, after I saw the testimonies from Ryan Graves, that I started to dig in further into my own experiences. And basically, I wanted to know what I've seen. I just want to get to the bottom of it and make sure that professionals like me have a way to report these sightings. Now, about my own sightings, as I said, in the last 20 years of flying, I've seen a lot of interesting things. The most anomalous were actually only taking place in the first few years of my flying career, and they always took place over Europe, which is important to note, because many people think that the UAP or UFO topic is something from Hollywood, it's American, but I can assure you it's definitely not. My first sighting was over Germany at night. It was a bright light that basically fell vertically down with an incredible speed. It disappeared into the clouds below. It illuminated the clouds below our airplane, indicating that it was something really outside of the cockpit. It wasn't just a reflection that I've seen. And even my instructor, which was flying next to me, it was one of my first flights as a commercial pilot, was really shocked by what we saw, and I never found an explanation for what it was. Almost 4 years later, I saw something very similar over the coast of Greece. It was a clear, bright day, no clouds, no thunderstorms around. We were flying at around 36,000 feet, and suddenly there was just roughly 10 kilometers ahead of us and a little bit to the east of us, a bright light falling vertically down. The moment we saw it, I think it must have been coming in at an altitude of around 60,000 feet. It was just a moment we could actually see it coming into the window frame. And it fell down within, let's say, roughly 1.5 seconds into the sea, just disappearing into the Adriatic Sea. We quickly made a short calculation on the back of our hands, and we calculated that it was moving, not even falling, but vertically moving with a speed of around 30,000 kilometers an hour, which is hypersonic, which is just incredible. I immediately asked air traffic control if there was any military activity, if there was any rocket launches or maybe something else going on. The military air traffic controller dismissed it immediately, and he left us just without any answers to our question. Another sighting, which happened over Greece, it happened in the same night that the carrier group with the USS Theodore Roosevelt, the American nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, was passing by just south of our location. And all of a sudden, it was a bright night, just a full sky full of stars, no clouds. We saw a very bright light appearing in the sky just ahead of us. It was impossible to judge how high it was, but it was, let's say, among the stars. It was very high. It disappeared and reappeared 4 times in succession. It was moving not like any satellite or airplane I've seen. And the 4th time it reappeared, it shot out with instantaneous speed, and it just disappeared among the stars. I have no other way to explain it, but the speed was just instantaneous and absolutely incredible. And we've never seen anything like this before. Neither my colleague who was sitting next to me saw it as well. As I said, that same night, the USS Theodore Roosevelt was passing by. So our default answer was, well, it must be something military, probably connected. But still, it was always in the back of my mind because I simply cannot even imagine what type of technology or propulsion could generate such an instantaneous speed. And the 4th sighting that I had took a little bit longer than a few seconds. It actually took almost a full hour. I don't know if we can switch to the next picture. It was a flight over Spain from Amsterdam to Malaga with a Boeing 737. We just passed into Spain over the Pyrenees. It was sunset. The sun had already set below the horizon. And all of a sudden, my colleague is asking me if I could identify the strange type of flying airplane that was, or flying object that was ahead of us. As you can see in the picture here, it had a really strange shape. And the reason why we were really curious on what we were seeing is that we were flying already at an altitude of 41,000 feet, which is significantly higher than most commercial traffic. We were flying this high because we're pretty much empty. We also got a direct course to the airport of Malaga because the airspace was pretty much empty. We were the only ones flying there, so we didn't have to follow any highways in the air. And for about 15 minutes, this object, whatever it was hanging ahead of us, significantly higher. And it didn't show any signs of a contrail, no tail, no engines, which you normally see when we spot other airplanes in the sky. And after about 15 minutes, it didn't move relative to our position. It didn't change altitude. It didn't grow bigger or larger or smaller, indicating that it would move to or from us. So after about, as I said, 15 minutes, I contacted air traffic control, the civilian air traffic controller, asking what type of airplane it was, because we were just wondering what kind of machine this would be. The air traffic controller was really surprised. He said, no, as far as I know, you guys are the only one over the entire Iberian Peninsula. So he asked us to describe what we saw, and he was absolutely clueless. And after a couple of minutes, he came back to me. He said, well, military air traffic control wants to know what you guys are seeing because they're very interested as well. This was, by the way, in 2010. I'm not sure if the date is important, but anyway, it was already a while ago. So military air traffic controller was interested. I told him all the details, and he basically confessed to us that there was no known traffic all the way up to Morocco, for as far as he knew. No military activities, no weather balloons, absolutely nothing going on. So we were just left clueless with what we've seen. We saw the object all the way up till our descent into Malaga, which was almost 55 or 60 minutes later. And for a full hour, we just saw this object straight ahead of us. It didn't really pose a threat, for as far as I know, at least. It was pretty far away. But for the longest time, it's now already 14 years ago, I've just been wondering what I've been seeing. And I'm really disappointed that I was never able to report this sighting anywhere. Later on, I found out there are websites like organizations like a UAP check, a MoveOn. For me as a professional, I was not really interested in the topic, and I was not even aware of those organizations. So I was just left absolutely clueless with my sightings. Since I came forward about 2 years ago publicly with podcasts and interviews, a lot of my colleagues have come forward privately, both in flight and also after the flight during dinner, with their own experiences, which are sometimes much more significant than my own experiences. Some of my colleagues have reported glowing or silver objects hovering next to the flight deck, next to the cockpit of their airplane, sometimes flying close to the speed of sound. Some of them have reported groups of pulsating lights overtaking them while flying at significant altitude and speeds. And also other colleagues have seen different sorts of lights, pulsating lights, etc. It's very varied. It doesn't really fit any certain type of description. The only common denominator is that we as pilots, we can never report it anywhere. So I think it's very important that there should be a way to get rid of the stigma. So pilots and professionals and military personnel are allowed to talk openly about it without repercussions. And there should be a way for us to report it in a way that these sightings and maybe even pictures, because a lot of my colleagues even took pictures of the stuff they've seen, should be analyzed in an objective and neutral way, because that's the only way to find out what else is flying in our airspace. So long story short, these are my modest experiences, one of them with an actual picture. And I just want to get to the bottom of it. I want to know what else is flying next to my airplanes.
That's just an amazing sighting to me. I mean, look at that for an hour. You're going to see this Tic Tac-like object. Amazing. That was Christian Van Heijst. Hopefully I do get him on the show. Amazing sightings there, especially that last one with the camera. You get Ryan Graves on there, at least his audio, and he explains that they have a lot of cases now. Americans for Safe Aerospace have many people contacted them, mostly commercial pilots. So let's hear what he said.
In 2014, I was an FA-18 pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers, and stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach, Virginia. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar system, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, and eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Morning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. The UAP we encountered and tracked on multiple sensors behaved in ways that surpassed our understanding, appearing motionless against hurricane-force winds, accelerating to over Mach 1, and outlasting our fighter jets. This experience, shared by many other aircrew along the eastern coast, continues nearly a decade later, and the identity of these UAP remain unknown. Recognizing the need for action and answers, I founded Americans for Safe Aerospace. We believe that UAP present an urgent priority for both aerospace safety and scientific inquiry. Our focus is on improving public education of UAP, breaking stigma, and working towards better transparency and disclosure. I'm proud and honored that more than 12,000 people have joined us in our mission at safeaerospace.org. Anyone can join, and I'm confident this is just the beginning. Last year, I testified before the U.S. Congress. The organization has also become a haven for military and commercial aircrew who have witnessed UAP. One of the biggest challenges these witnesses faced is reporting and the absence of safe intake processes. We are actively working with commercial and military witnesses who have come forward to us and shared their accounts. We work with each witness on a case-by-case basis depending on the witness's goals, but typically they contact us for help navigating official channels in the U.S. government. In cases with policy implications or where further investigation may be possible, we have helped witnesses share their experiences with members of Congress, professional staff of the Senate Armed Service Committee, investigators at the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is tasked with investigating UAP, and other agencies. The majority of witnesses who have contacted us are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often they are veterans with decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear to be above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit in the gray zone below the Kármán line. making inexplicable maneuvers like right-hand turns in retrograde orbits, or J-hooks. Sometimes these reports are reoccurring, with numerous recent sightings north of Hawaii in the northern Atlantic. Some of these reports may represent Starlink satellite flaring, but many defy easy explanations. We are working to improve resources to assist pilots with these identifications. In January, I'm proud to share that the Safe Aerospace for Americans Act was introduced in order to give commercial pilots an official, confident, and direct channel to report UAP encounters. If pilots see something, they should be able to say something and learn from it. Other witnesses I work with are military veterans who are sharing UAP encounters with our airspace and oceans. The most compelling involve observations by UAP by multiple witnesses and sensor systems. In these cases, again, most witnesses want their accounts documented and evaluated by the U.S. government, but there is much more work to be done by the U.S. military to support UAP reporting.
That was Ryan Graves. He also mentioned the Langley drone incursions back in December. I covered that on my last video. Also great to hear that Ryan's Americans for Safe Aerospace introduced looks like an amendment to a bill to actually require reporting from commercial airline pilots, if possible, at least to have some avenue of reporting. So he is still engaged in Congress, and we should see more of that coming online. Link to the full conference is in the description if you want to check it out. There are interesting questions after, but that was the main thrust of the conference, was really just breaking down the stigma. And they did have a conversation about reporting. There was one guy who actually works for the airspace reporting. He said there is a manner to actually report. And then Christian Van Heijst said he'd never heard of it. So he had actually never heard of that. But it goes to show that UAPs are being investigated in Europe. There is a lot of data going back many years, many decades. And like you saw there, up to 10% are close encounters. That's a lot. And at least 3% are dedicated as UAPs. Those are real UAPs after being investigated. So investigation is going on in Europe. It has been going on for many decades. They do have UAP cases. Okay. They do. It's not just in the US. And they do have organizations that are investigating it. And as you see here, now they're in the European Union Parliament. So this should be a historic conference here. Hopefully it continues. Thanks so much to Francisco Guerrera for chairing this and making this actually happen. And thanks to everyone who participated. There's Beatriz Villarroel, again, a member, part of the Soul Foundation. Thank you for being here. Thanks to all my patrons so much. Couldn't do this without you guys. If you want to become a patron, please click on the little link and join. You get access to all my videos as well as backstage content for as little as $5 a month. I appreciate the support. Or you can be a YouTube member here. Hit the like button if you did like the content and subscribe for future notifications of my videos. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.